Ever met somebody new and really wanted to develop a connection, but then the conversation didn't really work out the way you thought? That's happened to me before. And uh, first of all, hi, I'm Leisa Reid, founder of Get Speaking Gigs Now, and I speak all over the country and recently in another country as well. And I love to help entrepreneurs find their voice so that you can also speak and market your business and attract your ideal clients through speaking. But today we're really talking about building that connection. Like, how do you build a connection with someone that you've never met before? It's your first phone call, your first email, your first Zoom call, your first in person meeting when we get to meet in person again. And why is that important? Well, it's important because if you're going to be booking yourself for speaking engagements, you're going to be meeting a lot of people new for the first time. And that initial conversation is usually with someone who is the event host, the event planner, the booker for the event. And before you meet them, they're a stranger. But you can develop a connection pretty quickly and rapport pretty quickly with these three tips I'm going to share with you today. And when you're able to use these three tips, then you're able to really bring down those barriers. You know, a lot of times when we meet someone for the first time, we're maybe a little on guard or like, what does this person want from me? And but once we start to, if you ever had that experience where you're kind of like warming up the conversation, you're like, oh, it's kind of starting to warm up. Like, we're having fun, we're engaging, we're learning about each other, right? So these three tips I learned several years ago, and it was funny when I learned them because they already had come naturally to me, but I wasn't doing it on purpose or intentionally. I didn't really understand that there was actually ways to create rapport. I just had a natural gift for it. So if you already have a natural gift for it, listen for these. And it's like, oh yeah, I do these. Or if you're like, yeah, I really could use that help, then you'll want to practice using these. Okay, so the first tip is compliment. This is to me really easy. And you might think, how would I compliment somebody on a Zoom call? Well, I get compliments a lot of times on my red lipstick. I think there's not a whole heck of a lot we have to talk about necessarily. So sometimes people just, that's the first thing they notice. So I notice I get compliments on my lipstick, which means certainly you could compliment somebody else on an accessory they have, something that they're wearing, or perhaps it's something in the background. A lot of times I'll get comments on, you know, like this week I've been having flowers in the background. So ooh, that could create some compliments, or people might say, "Oh, where did you get those? They're so pretty." Right? That's a compliment. It doesn't, I will say it needs to be authentic. Don't say you like something if you don't actually like something. And it doesn't have to be about something visual. It might be their tone of voice, or gosh, I'm really looking forward to connecting with you or meeting with you because I've read about you and you just seem really impressive. Or it can be something about the person or about something that occurs to you, but it should come naturally. It shouldn't be like forced. Okay. Don't compliment somebody on something if you don't really think it's true. All right. So compliment is number one. The next one is collaboration. And this one is, I've actually done it a couple times already on this live, but it might be shifting your language into like a we or us, or like it's thinking like we're in this together. Like, how can we solve this problem? How can we really move forward on something? Or how can I support you? Right? Those are words that you, or phrases you could use to create a collaborative feeling. And that takes it from the us, them, or we're against each other, or we're competing, or I want something from you, right? So sometimes when you're meeting someone for the first time, depending on who you're talking to, like I said, they might think, what is this? What does she want? What does he want from me? What's going on? And so this way, when you use that collaborative approach, it's a much easier way to get the conversation started, warm each other up. Like, okay, yeah, we're in this together. It's exciting. I think it's fun, right? I don't want to be against the person. I want to be with you. Like, what can I do to support you? How can I help you? What can we do together to make this happen? Okay, so those are examples of collaborative type of language. All right. The next one is, or actually the third one and the last one I'm going to talk about today, is commonality. And this one can go, this could be really fun. It's finding something in common. All right. So right now, everyone in the world has something in common. We are all in the middle of a pandemic. Okay. So you might hear people mention that. And again, it's probably not intentional, but it's finding that common ground. I'm not recommending that you bring up the pandemic as your commonality, but I'm just saying it's a real easy grab right now because everyone's dealing with it. You might have heard people talk about the weather or traffic or whatever. Those are things that people have in common. Those aren't my favorite things to talk about when we have something in common. But if you have nothing else, of course you can grab that. But things that I would ask for, maybe I might think, oh, where are you from? And if there's anything I have in common with about where they're from, that will naturally come to me. It doesn't mean that you have to have done exactly that thing or been at that place that they're from, but you might be able to relate in some way. So, for example, I was raised in Fairbanks, Alaska, which, in case you don't know, can get pretty cold. And it's a small town, and so there's a lot. Even though I live in Orange County, California, where it's sunny all the time, when I talk to somebody who's from one of the more northern states or Canada or somewhere where it gets pretty cold, immediately I'm going to grab my experience from Alaska because I can relate to what they're going through if it's in the middle of winter. And a lot of times they might say, "Oh my gosh, today it's so cold. It looks so sunny where you are." And I say, "Oh, I totally can relate. I lived in 16 years. I lived in Fairbanks, Alaska. I totally get it. Dark, cold, 65 below. I've done it, right?" So that would be something I could use to create a commonality, or you could use. Now, what if you literally cannot relate? You're like, gosh, I just cannot relate to that. So commonality is a fun one because you can flip it. You can use, like, say someone says, "Oh, I'm a surfer," right? Now, I personally am not a surfer, and I don't plan to become one because that's not my wheelhouse. But I know people who are surfers, and I could also say, "Wow, that's super cool. I don't know anything about that. Like, I've never surfed before. What is that like for you?" So it may not be something we have in common, but I'm able to say, "I actually don't have that in common with you. Tell me more." And who's the most interesting person to anyone? Themselves. So it kind of works, right? So I want you to be able to utilize these techniques. So number one, to review, is compliment. Number two is collaborate. And number three is commonality. You can use those three techniques, not always at the same time, not always in the same conversation, but if you're having a hard time making a connection with someone, or you want to build connection pretty quickly because you're, meeting that person for the first time, and you're going to be doing something with them, then use those tips, and I want to hear how it goes. So let me know how you created that rapport with that person, and how, using these techniques, you've been able to get them to agree to have you speak on their stage, because that's a pretty cool thing when that happens. And I'm assuming that it's going to be a win-win for everyone. It's going to be a win for them, a win for you, and of course, a win for the audience that you will be speaking for. So that is our tips for today. I want you to imagine yourself building that connection, building that rapport with those folks. And I will see you next time. This is Leisa Reid from Get Speaking Gigs Now. I'll talk to you soon.